Tonight I'm going to continue. Uh, this is the third talk in a series of 6 on what we refer to as the Paramitas. And uh, many of you have heard the first 2, or perhaps even seen these recorded. And I always, and I know you will have heard this before, but especially for anybody who's newer, I try to put this into context and explain just a little bit about what the paramitas are before getting into the third paramita, which is Kshanti, or the perfection of patience. So if you'll have patience with me, I'll get into this here. Paramita is a Sanskrit or Pali term. It's often translated as perfection. And in Buddhist commentaries, it's described as noble character qualities generally associated with enlightened beings. In Buddhism and in Zen, we have all kinds of lists that honestly can be daunting. We can be overwhelmed with these, especially when we're just beginning our practice. We have the 3 treasures, the 3 tenets, the 3 pure precepts, the 4 Bodhisattva vows, the 4 noble truths, the 6 paramitas, the Eightfold Path, the 10 grave precepts, and the 10,000 things, and more. It's endless. So it's easy to be confused by this, or to feel a bit overwhelmed, like we're expected to memorize and understand all of this fully. And I really want to welcome everybody to just relax and let that go. Avoid any concern about that. Many of us, have been doing this for years, and we grew our appreciation of these practices, like the paramitas, gradually over years of practice. So take your time with these things. Approach them like koan, slowly, one by one. In this talk, I refer liberally to a book by Norman Fischer, one of my favorite writers, called The World Could Be Otherwise. And he goes into great length about the paramitas. I highly recommend it if you're interested. The World Could Be Otherwise by Norman Fischer. And Norman's a poet, so he writes beautifully as well. These paramitas, again, are referred to as perfections, and that too can be intimidating. I'm not perfect, and don't expect I ever will be. So these practices are tools that we use to wake up, to forget our small self, and to appreciate our lives just as they are. As such, when we practice with these tools, we never arrive. We're never finished. As we say, delusion is inexhaustible. So it's a lifelong practice. And with the paramitas, similar to the 10 grave precepts and perhaps the Eightfold Path, these are not rules. These are not a rigid structure that we apply to ourselves to keep from doing bad things. These are, as I said in the beginning, descriptions of what enlightenment looks like. These are an invitation to step into these paramitas and to try them on, to practice them. They're not something that we believe in. They're not ideas that we walk around with, trying to hope that we don't forget them so that we can be good Zen students. These are things that we embody. In English, these 6 perfections or paramitas are translated as generosity, ethical conduct, patience, the one we're going to talk about tonight, joyful effort, meditation, and understanding. And they all have Sanskrit titles that I'll use sparingly. So tonight we're going to focus on the third of these, and maybe by the end of the summer we'll get through all 6 of them. We're going to focus on Kshanti Paramita, or the perfection of patience. Commonly, in non-Zen culture, when we think of patience, other terms come up, such as forbearance or tolerance or willpower or something like that. There's kind of a stoic element to those things, isn't there? One definition of a stoic is a person who can endure pain or hardship without showing their feelings or complaining. That's not what we're doing here. That's not Kshanti Paramita. That's not the perfection of patience. But with that stoic, comically, with that stoic image, I see one of my aunties gritting her Catholic teeth, or somebody shaking their fist, trying not to reply in anger, or Sergeant Schultz shouting, "I see nothing." Though those mental postures may feel active, they really are passive, and they impede energy flow. They impede intimacy with ourselves. Practicing the perfection or the paramita of patience is intimately active. It's highly energized. Some say, and perhaps Norman said this, that the patience paramita is the most important of the 6, as without it, the others will fail. And I've given talks on these 6 paramitas a number of times, and every time I feel or experience or see something new or different, they kind of unfold a little bit or open up without sounding too mystical. But today I really felt this as I went through my day, trying to be with what it was that I was doing. I felt that patience was the most important thing, the most important tool at hand. But I have that feeling of I want this to be over, or I don't like what's going on, or I wish I was somewhere else. What brings me back to, let's say, oneness is patience. It occurs to me that Zazen is the ultimate expression of patience. Every one of us probably has had that feeling of wanting to get up and walk out of the room, walk away from our sitting, or not sit today. Or we were going to sit for 20 minutes and it's been 10 minutes and I'm done. Patience is what brings us back. Suffering and difficulty in our lives are unavoidable. Whether it's a big life change or something relatively minor on a daily basis. It's just an annoyance. As long as we prefer this over that, as long as we reject discomfort and choose familiarity and predictability and safety, we'll experience some degree of suffering. It happened today. I won't share any details, but in an interaction, I felt dismissed by someone else. I don't think they intended that. I don't think they did anything necessarily. It was me. I knew I owned that feeling, but I was able to be patient with that and watch as my indignation rose up in the form of heat in my body, and my heart rate elevated a little bit. And in a matter of seconds, I found a culprit, a motive, a defensive posture. It was beautiful, and it made me smile. I thought, well, there you are, you silly old man. Are you sure of what you think just happened, or are you making stuff up? I couldn't have seen that without being patient. This is a big thing. When my life gets challenging, or when I experience loss or tragedy, as happens to all of us, I have the tendency to set my practice aside exactly at the time that I need it the most. I'm sure everyone here has had that experience. And I can turn away from what's going on and not bear witness to my feelings and to those circumstances, to my reactions. I can harden my heart and isolate myself. I think that's like the call for patience. I need to be patient with myself and see what it is that I'm doing. In Zen, we talk about the first arrow and the second arrow. The first arrow is something happened. Maybe it's a big thing. Maybe someone in my family or my social circle died, and it really hurts. That's the first arrow. The second one is me saying I shouldn't feel this. You're not very evolved. Look at you suffering. Back to patience. When things don't go our way from the weather, and those of us here in Boulder, I think we're about to get some weather tomorrow, from the weather to an overdraft fee or a flat tire, or somebody cancels a meeting after we already drove, across town. It's really easy to get drawn into, why is this happening? And I think the real question, I'll speak for myself, the real question I'm asking when I do that, why is this happening, sounds rather benign. It's passive voice. What I'm really asking is, who's to blame for this? And it does get more challenging when there is somebody else. Perhaps somebody who, in fact, has insulted or disrespected me, or canceled the meeting and forgot to tell me. Now I have a culprit. But blame is a really effective way to deny reality. There was something really charming in the news today. A A well-known public official, I'll say, was asked about the economy and which parts, when his positive effect on the economy was going to kick in. And he said, basically, he said, well, I think it's kicking in now. The good parts are mine, and the bad parts are the fault of the guy before me. It was beautiful. It was beautiful in its childish simplicity. Blame is a really effective way to deny reality. The eighth century current era Buddhist philosopher Shantideva said, if you can't find a solution, what's the point of being upset? And if you can find a solution, what's the point of being upset? Some of you know I'm involved with Zen peacemakers, and for activists or for those who, are looking closely at the injustices of the world and hoping to make some kind of change, this Kshanti practice, or the practice of patience paramita, perfection of patience, is especially rich. I struggle with this when I see racism persisting after all these years, my whole life, perhaps even getting worse. And climate change denial enduring or getting worse, despite incontrovertible facts. And sexism and misogyny still festering and bombs dropping on kids. My patience is really tested. Somebody must be to blame. Then I have to ask myself, as Shantideva would, what's my solution? If I have one, then go do it. Once we bear witness, once we look dispassionately at what's going on and we engage the third tenet of taking action, it's easy to fall into taking a position. I'm for this and I'm against that. I'm with these guys because they're the victims, and I'm against those guys because they're the perpetrators. I get impatient. I want the change right now, and I want the bad guys to pay for what they've done. It's really a challenge for activists. I don't hear people expressing this very often, but it occurred to me that war is often, and I don't know about always, but sometimes anyway, often, the abandonment of patience. Patience as a practice directly applies to the Four Noble Truths. By letting my feelings of indignation and righteousness and blame find a home in my heart, then I'm the cause of my own suffering. Nobody did that to me. Netanyahu didn't do that to me. I did it to myself. Anger is really, my experience is, anger is the most effective threat to my patience and equanimity. Anger in general, but most intimately in my personal relationships. It can pull me completely off balance, then linger like a wound long after. The practice of patience with anger, I think, is a big one for a lot of us. It doesn't necessarily mean being passive or compliant or acquiescing, or not taking action when others do or intend harm. And not responding wisely in those situations and not resolving them afterwards, that's not healthy. I think I said it in the newsletter, something about this, that we are called to act. So action is not abandoning patience. You can even act to change the situation. And it's not, like I said, it's not healthy for us when we don't do that. I won't go into detail, but there's an event that occurred, I don't know, 38, 40 years ago in my life. And I was very proud of myself because in the face of someone else being outrageous, really, really outrageous, I was patient and I didn't react. I stayed calm and dignified and comported myself well and left the situation. And I'll tell you, every single second of that interaction is alive in my memory today, unresolved, like a little video clip or a reel from Facebook. Again, Shanti Davis said, the actions of other people, no matter how heinous they are not what make us angry. The real cause of our anger is our own unwise reaction to the action. If you hit me and I don't mind it, there's no anger. If you wave a stick through the air and I'm not there to receive the blow, there's no anger. You made me angry is never accurate. No other person is responsible for my anger, no matter how terrible their behavior may have been. So giving into that anger is abandoning patience. It can come up really quickly before we even know it. We've taken a bodily sensation or a thought and we solidified it. We made it real. Maybe we gave it words and we spoke it. We breathed life into it through our language. Maybe we even took action based on that anger. Yeah, we can't stop it. That's futile. Can't stop it. Getting angry at ourselves for being angry is just stacking up the arrows. Ultimately, this practice of patience requires us to turn and face our anger without feeding it, without adding a story to it, or without acting out based on it. And this is really uncomfortable. For me, to be sure, I can't speak for anyone else. I feel like I'm denying standing up for my rights or for justice, for truth. You insulted me and now I'm pissed. I've got rights. You can't trample my rights. My first Zen teacher back in the 70s said something that I found outrageous at the time, and I've carried it with me ever since. She said, none of us has rights. That's just an idea. And she asked, show them to me. There's a flow of events around anger that normally we experience really quickly. It's energy flashing by. And we don't notice that there's space in between each of these things where a choice to be patient is available. Something happens, we get insulted. A guy backs his car into mine. My sister goes off on me like she always does. I have a bodily reaction. My heart rate goes up. I flush. My hands might get sweaty. My vision narrows. I get agitated. I create a story about this in seconds flat. Reason, victim, perpetrator, and a vision of a remedy. There's spaces in between each of these. I respond verbally in anger. Perhaps I get out of my car and beat on the other guy's car with a 7-iron. I feel righteous for a minute, and then ashamed and guilty. At each one of those turns, there's a space. And with practice, we can begin to notice that space between and around each one, each event, each escalation. Space where we can be still and choose what we do consciously. Space where we can be patient. Our choice might be not to react, or it might be to reply sternly. In some cases, we might take physical action, but we'll do so from a position of equanimity. Norman Fischer says that most often what we need to do is be angry when we are angry. What he means is to fully experience every aspect of our anger and impatience, not to indulge or feed or express them. Those two are separate things, and it's important that we see that there's a distinction. There's things we can do when this happens. We can notice it come up. We can notice how it feels and stay with that feeling in our body. We can label it, perhaps. This is my anger coming up now. I see it. Pause and breathe. Feel our heart beating. Feel my face flush. If you can, remember the empty boat metaphor. Avoid making decisions or taking action until it passes. Practicing patience with our frustration, our anger, our dissatisfaction with circumstances is all immediately available to every one of us, perhaps on a daily basis, if not, more frequently. Every one of us experiences these things. Many of us act or speak on them and then feel guilty that we did. And it's a spiral. We're called to practice being patient with ourselves, most importantly, just as we are, messy, our feet in the mud, imperfect. Wouldn't it be freeing to be able to experience even a little spaciousness when these emotions come up, to be able to pause and see them as fleeting and unsubstantial? This is something we can all do, and I invite us all to practice this perfection of patience. One of the things I think you can feel the benefits of immediately and intimately. I want to finish up. I just want to say that the study of this Paramita is so rich and so deep, and I just touched on a little bit of it here, and it was completely from my perspective, and there are other perspectives. I invite you to explore those. But I do refer you to Norman's book. It's really, really good for a deeper and more comprehensive study. And I thank you all so much for listening. Thank you so much.